So, good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, let's just do a tiny brief recap. I don't say brief recap. There was an earthquake yesterday. Kim, who was out there up near Lake Geneva, said there was like a 4.0 earthquake here in Northeast Ohio. Yeah, pretty crazy. I've heard that some parts of Africa is splitting. Ocean is coming in between some parts of the African continent. I wouldn't doubt it. Okay. Yeah, there's a Cat 3 hurricane going to be hitting Florida. Like, literally hitting Florida. At first, it started out as a tropical storm, of which we were kind of like lured into the seductive feeling like, okay, hurricane season might not be that bad, given that California was hit by a tropical storm. And then you hear the verbiage change, even in the Weather Channel. It's, oh yeah, tropical storm Idalia. Not hurricane Idalia. So you see the words in the Weather Channel, in the news reports, tropical storm Idalia is going to make landfall sometime Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. But they're like, oh, rapid intensification. I'm watching these videos from the Weather Channel, and they're warning us, telling us, have you heard of the term rapid intensification? Where at first something is slow, and then at the last minute, it intensifies excessively, extremely, aggressively intensifies. That's the world you're living in. You're not getting a lot of warning. You're getting enough warning. People are noticing the different invests and the different names of certain storms out there in the Atlantic or in other places that feed into then where it's going to end up in the U.S. And then all of a sudden one day it's like, well, we have a tropical storm making its way to the Gulf or the Atlantic. Okay, these are indicators. These are some major fucking indicators. Katrina was an indicator. California tropical storm was an indicator. Last year, hurricane whatever was an indicator. What happened to Fort Myers, Florida was an indicator. A freaking indicator. I showed you guys the Navy map that showed you what the projected configuration of the U.S. and how the U.S. was going to be reconfigured in the future, if not now. Those are indicators. Okay? Major fucking indicators. The whole J world is a huge fucking indicator. I'm an indicator. I'm an indicator that, yes, you may have trauma in your world and you can release that trauma as long as you're in a place where you're not just surviving, that you have a place to release that trauma and become whole again, assuming that you're making the right, correct decisions of where you live to begin with. What do you mean right, correct decisions? Well, people are planning to move to Florida. People are planning to move to Louisiana, to New Orleans. What? What? Hasn't the past at all indicated to you what's to come, what is going on in the South? Much less the coast, on the Atlantic coast, and the Gulf Coast, and even the Pacific coast. But hasn't enough devastation been enough for you to be like, no, I'm not going to move to New Orleans. No, I'm not going to move to Pensacola, Florida. No, I'm not going to stay in Florida. I'm going to find a way to get the fuck out. Holy shit. And so when you hear the words tropical storm and it lures you into a feeling of like, oh, it's not going to be so bad, until the last fucking second, rapid intensification. Now it's a hurricane Cat 3. It was Cat 2 yesterday, but it's going so slow up to the Gulf, it's going to take today to intensify. And it could be a Cat 4 by tomorrow. It could be a Cat 5 or a Cat fucking 6 tomorrow. They have all day to intensify that fucking storm. See, that's why we're in a great reset, because people are not fucking aware. They don't listen to indicators. They don't take advice. They're living in their own fucking fantasy land. Like, it literally just trips me out to see what people are planning. Knowing the devastation that happened last fucking year. Knowing what happened to Fort fucking Myers. And you're planning to move to New Orleans. You're planning to move to freaking Pensacola. You're not even making plans to leave places like Florida. I'm telling you, I'm in probably, what would you say, a 15-minute city when you think about it. With Canton, Ohio, from one end to the other, probably 15 minutes without traffic. I'm in a 15-minute city. I'm not too worried about anything going on over here. As far as natural disasters. Maybe, yeah, tornadoes. But as far as like a major hurricane taking out, nah. But I would be so flippin' concerned living down there in Florida that, yeah, a job may have taken you down there to Florida, or you thought it would be just the easy life, right? No, the indicators of the last few years, the last 10, 15 years, and the last few years should have told you that's not the place to be anymore. Now you're going to have to reconfigure your future and realize, okay, maybe the money is up here now. Because now we're going into smart cities. They are redeveloping infrastructure and construction and things. Infrastructure is crumbling, and they need people to help redevelop and rebuild the infrastructure as it goes through its breakdown during this crazy ass climate change. There is no future in Florida. You know, the biggest retirement place is the Villages down there in South Florida. A huge retirement place. A bunch of retirees, and they have their own community. And eventually that's going to be washed away at some point, if not chipped away systematically the next however many years. Right now, that Cat 3 hurricane that might be turning to Cat 4 or Cat 5 tomorrow. Because they still have even tomorrow. Because they're saying it might make landfall tomorrow night, Tuesday night to Wednesday morning. So what's in the crosshairs? Englewood, Northport, Punta Gorda, Tampa, Bradenton, all of those different keys out there, right there in the crook of Florida. And you can't rule out Tallahassee. You can't rule out Panama City. But I can't afford to move. So you're saying that your life isn't worth it. Your life isn't worth living. To make plans to save yourself from at least something that's so obvious, like freaking hurricanes. The one that happened in California should have been a major indicator that now everything's up for, everything's on the table. Everything and anything is possible. The intensity will be possible, whatever that is, Cat 6. And so people are complaining about, oh, I'm not free. I'm trying to fight for my freedom. You know, you see all these people's memes out there when they're talking about, oh yeah, you can't force me. I do not comply. And right? And you're giving warnings how intense these hurricane seasons are going to be. And you're living in Florida. You're living on the coast. And you say you want to be free. Freedom requires responsibility. Freedom requires some element of independence. Freedom requires you to give a shit about your body, your mind, and your fucking spirit. That's what freedom is. Freedom is not relying on somebody to save you and tell you when to get out, tell you when to evacuate. You see out there, they're like, oh, they're going to start evacuating people. When I first learned of this on Sunday or even Saturday, whatever I showed on my Facebook, I would have evacuated a long time ago, yesterday or the day before. I would have made plans to figure out how to get the fuck out. When you have to be told when to evacuate because you do not listen to indicators, you are dependent on somebody to save you, and blame somebody. Because even Ryan Hall, y'all, when I listen to him, watching his projections on what's going on, he's saying you can't bitch about someone not warning you, because we've been warning you for the last freaking weeks of how much activity is going on in the Atlantic, and you still are staying put in fucking Florida on the goddamn coasts. Yeah, you don't deserve freedom because you don't even know what the fuck to do with it. You can't even take care of yourself. You can't even listen to indicators. So I said Cat 3, could be Cat 4, probably tomorrow, or even Cat 5. You never fucking know. The system has 2 days to intensify, to rapidly intensify these hurricanes that are swirling in the Atlantic and in the Gulf. And you know how warm those waters are at the Gulf? They're like 100 degrees. Mike's weather page was always taking temperature of the degrees of the water in the fucking Gulf. And I follow so many weather pages. I follow the Weather Channel. I follow Ryan Hall, y'all. I follow Mike's weather page. I follow all these Atlantic and Gulf Coast storm chasers who are putting out indicators. Shit's going on. Look what's going on. And we hear about climate change. We hear about all this stuff. Okay? And I'm like, get the fuck out today. Today is what, Monday? But if you can't afford to, if you can't, see, the thing is, living in a place like Florida, living in vacation spots that are really pretty when it's not so crazy as far as the weather, you got to be able to afford to live there, which means you can afford to be there for the pretty times, and you can afford to get the fuck out when it gets crazy so you can save yourself. So if you can't afford to move out of Florida or to leave, not even move out, just to leave, do you belong living there? Do you deserve to live there if you can't even afford to leave? So I said, get out today. This is not California. You're in freaking Florida. Get the fuck out. Fly out. Driving out when there's so much traffic, that already is in its own issue in itself. Where the hell are you going to go? At least when you fly out, you go to a particular place like Ohio or other places to the left, to the north, and to a little bit left. But here in Ohio, we have pretty mild weather right now. I mean, I'm wearing a sweat outfit. It's 53 degrees outside. All the energy is going to be swirling down there. If you're from Ohio and you move to Florida, you should be flying your ass out of Florida, going up to Ohio and getting into a hotel and riding out the storm that way, and you're not even anywhere in the storm. You might come back to devastation, but at least you and your family are safe. And you can start over again somewhere else. Get the insurance money and get the hell out. No, what are people doing? They're waiting for someone to tell them to evacuate, or they're going to ride it out, think they're going to survive it like Hurricane Ian or those Hurricane Dennis way back when in the 1980s, 1990s. This is not the 1980s and 1990s. They're not going to have a few years or 10 years in between each major devastation or have them less devastating than the next. No. This is already telling you some pretty catastrophic shit's going to happen. You really think your family and you might survive it, but you think you're going to be able to handle that much water? Maybe you will survive, maybe you won't. Who the hell knows? What about your animals? What about your young children? You're going to risk their lives so that way you don't have to fucking change or do it. Hold on. Anything different? Wow. And so somebody told me one time, freedom is earned. It is not given. And so who told me this? Well, my mother told me this when I wanted to go and do whatever I wanted to do. And I said it to her at some point when I was a teenager because I was really rebelling against every single rule. And she is like, freedom is earned, it's not given. Privileges are earned, they're not given. And so she says, and I sound like her, okay? Until you can prove that you are relatively self-sufficient, you don't need the medical, holistic, or law enforcement to manage your disease, because even law enforcement manages people's criminal disease of entitlement and shortcuts, right? And you keep yourself alive without doing damage to yourself in the meantime and anyone else. You have earned the right to be free. When you listen to indicators and said there's some shit going on out there in the Atlantic, coming through the Gulf and hitting somewhere, I would have already figured out how to sell my house, get out, just redo the career or take the career somewhere else, relocate your whole family to somewhere that's less in the path of these hurricanes, and save yourself. And now that means your freedom. You have freedom because you have the future forethought. Future thinking is fucking freedom. When you're living from paycheck to paycheck and you have no room to move and you're living in areas that are just so prone to devastation, you're a slave because you don't future think, you don't future plan, and you don't listen to indicators, and you wait for somebody out there to save you. Yeah, you're a slave because you put yourself in that slavery. And so, until you can prove that you are relatively self-sufficient, you don't need the medical, holistic, or law enforcement to manage your disease, and you keep yourself alive without doing damage to yourself in the meantime and damaging someone else, you have earned the right to be free. But if you still blame someone or depend upon somebody to give you a way out of responsibility or tell you when to fucking evacuate, you have not earned your freedom. You haven't proven you can handle the responsibility. You're not old enough. You're not mature enough. If you can't prove to the world you are responsible for yourself and your actions, if you still have to depend upon law enforcement and the medical holistic system to manage your disease and telling you when to evacuate a very hurricane-prone area, please don't complain to me about your lack of freedom. You haven't earned the right to be free. You are still a child, depend upon somebody else to save you or manage your disease. And even sitting there waiting for a hurricane to come take your ass out is managing your disease, because knowing that a hurricane could potentially take you out is called dis-ease. You're not feeling easy. You're not feeling everything is great. No, you are in dis-ease when you're sitting in Florida, right there at the freaking target zone, and you haven't even found a way to get the fuck out. In Jacksonville, Florida, Lake City, Florida, all the different places in Florida where you see where that stuff is going, you haven't figured out how to get out. Well, I can't afford to. Then don't bitch about freedom, because you have strapped yourself to where you have no movement, no freedom. You did that to yourself, knowing the history of Florida, knowing there are people out there warning you of these crazy storms, geoengineering, weather modification. The intensity of the storms are so much more aggressive, and you don't listen to people. That's a child that doesn't fucking listen, that doesn't look both ways for crossing the street. You think that child is mature enough to be out on their own, having its own apartment, going to its own job, and taking care of his financial responsibilities or her financial responsibilities? No. We have adults who don't even take care of themselves like that. We have adults who are in their 50s that don't future think. And they expect to have freedom. They can't even take care of themselves or their fucking children. They're giving their children and themselves to the medical holistic system. They don't have any responsibility of taking care of themselves. And they're waiting for authorities to say, hey, time to evacuate. We've been warning you. There's going to be a lot of freaking flooding and potential devastation. And you're still sitting your ass there? What? Building sandbags around your fucking house? Okay. Yeah. That's why we're in a great reset. Because right there, when you haven't made any plans to get the hell out of Florida, knowing the history of Florida, knowing the history of the last 3 fucking years, and you know many people have conspiracy theorists as friends that they mock, that they jeer, they disrespect, they make fun of, and say they're like stupid and paranoid and looking for attention and gullible. Look who's fucking gullible. There's a sitting fucking duck. And you've had your conspiracy friends tell you shit's going on, I would get the hell out of these places, especially a peninsula like fucking Florida. So that's why we're in a great reset. And y'all been warned. You've been warned so many fucking years. And so, you know, it's tough to watch these type of things happen, knowing, that's what I'm saying, it's tough to watch people destroy themselves, their family, their lives, by not doing things to take care of themselves and their family, by ignoring indicators, by expecting someone to tell them what to do. Right there, that's a clue that you're not old enough to be free. When you have to depend upon authority to tell you when to fucking evacuate. And where the hell are you going to go to evacuate? To higher ground? To a big stadium like in Katrina? Remember that? When they all evacuated into that huge stadium. And that had its own issues. And you hear about stuff, if you're watching the reels of what happened in Hawaii, and they're saying, oh, no one, or even in was it Spokane or British Columbia? They're letting things burn. There is no help coming in to gas the cars for the water trucks to put the fires out. If some of you are paying attention and knowing that some shit's going on, they want to push everyone in the rural areas into the cities. And you're going to be like, I'm going to survive, live in the rural areas. People don't have the means to move to the city, or they don't want to move to the cities. You'll be smoked out, fired out, flooded out, frozen out. Oh yeah. People who are resisting what's going on, you can't stop it. It's been in the works for fucking years. You know, my life is worth it to me. My life is so worth to live than to resist what the intentions are. My life is so valuable. And you can see how people do not value their life. You can see it. When they're given every warnings in the book, and they're just like, yeah, I'm going to resist. I'm going to do my own way. I'm a survivalist. When someone says, it's not about living now, it's just about surviving. Yeah, because when you have painted yourself in a corner, and you haven't taken care of yourself, your body, mind, and spirit, and you haven't listened to indicators, and you ignored every indicator, every warning, and now you're between a rock and a hard place, and now you're just surviving because you haven't given yourself the opportunity to survive and then live. You have just eked out your last little bit of fun, and now the devil is taking his due. Well, you had plenty of chances to release those demons or get to higher ground or move somewhere different. You have put yourself personally in that position to now just to be a survivalist. See, I'm not surviving, actually. I'm just thriving. The weather here is pretty mild. Yeah, we had a few storms, and they had a bunch of tornadoes up north, but I'm not up north. I'm here in an inner city. I hung out with my neighbors yesterday. It was kind of fun, actually. Got to know them. And my little block is actually a nice little area. I mean, I'm not assuming nothing's going to happen as far as tornadoes and deep freezes that will happen this winter. But I'm not just surviving. Because my husband and I have made plans to get where we needed to go. I mean, when I think about it, back when we were living in Florida, in Lake City, and then we decided that wasn't for us, and you know, and his brother actually recommended us to live up there, up north, up in Ohio, back home. And his brother gave us a place to live for a few months. And we all had plans to do something, and it just didn't work out because of differences of opinion and all that shit. But his brother saved our life because we could still be down there in Florida. I mean, it's 2023, and that was way back in 2015, right? But I do give credit where it's due. His brother saved our life, because if we had still stayed in Florida, we would be like up Shit's Creek right now. Up Shit's Creek right now. And so, luckily, my husband and I are both very evolutionary when you think about it. Very adaptable. And we can change when we need to. That's what's going to save you, is the ability to change when you need to. And my husband and I, we have traveled around. We've lived different places. We have suffered together, lived in motels in West Sacramento, in the freaking ghetto in the West Sacramento, next to hookers and pimps and con artists. And we not only survived that, but we found a way to use that and then jump to the next level and then the next level and the next level. And so we know how to suffer. We know how to start from fucking zero. And when you're living in a hotel or a motel, where you rent it by the week, we're paying $800 a week or whatever the hell it was back then in West Sacramento. And then I became a roommate to somebody else. And then we got married. And then we get into the truck. And when you can start from fucking zero, you can survive most every situation when you listen to indicators. And you're okay with just throwing away everything that you had, because you can always start over again. And you'll survive. But people who don't know how to evolve and adapt and change and listen to indicators, yeah, you're going to be a fucking slave to all of your fantasies. And that's what's going on right now. People in Florida, they are slave to their fantasy that their life, the tropical life, was going to be forever. When the system has been telling them through the hurricanes and the climate change and all the conspiracy theorists in their world was trying to warn them what was going on, and they still want to stay a slave to their fucking fantasies. That's what a child does. Children don't know danger for what it is. Children need parents to tell them what the fuck to do. Children don't know how to look both ways for a crossing the street. Children need someone to entertain them all the fucking time. Children are not mature enough to be on their own. And it's plainly obvious. Just because they gave you a job and they gave you a place to live and all that doesn't mean that you know how to deal with that situation or know when to get out when there's danger. So just because you're 50, 40, or 30 and you have a good job and a nice car and a bunch of kids doesn't mean you're mature enough to be raising that family. It doesn't mean you're mature enough to be living. If you can't even listen to indicators and save yourself and save your family, even from just danger, not even saving family from disease, because that's very individual, but something as obvious as a fucking hurricane. I mean, that's like basic shit. Basic shit. Let me tell you, if I was in a place like that, and I knew, I'd be telling my husband, we gotta get the hell out. We gotta, but luckily, back then in 2013, we got out of Florida. I mean, it was fun. We had fun in Florida. We lived the high life. But when it's too good to be true, it really is too good to be true. And I remember when we were moving down there and we heard about a hurricane scare, and I'm in this hotel room as we were trying to figure out how to rent a house and all this stuff, because we just moved there from Phoenix. And I'm looking at the sky, looking at the clouds going by hella quick, and I'm putting gefilte fish and some canned food in a cupboard in a hotel room. That was an indicator. Why would I want to move to hurricane country? But then I was in the conspiracy world, but not too much heavily into it. And climate change was talked about, but we were resisting it or saying it's not going to happen or saying it's a political thing, because I was in the conspiracy world even back then. But now we're seeing what climate change is when 2019, 2020 happened. And then we saw the atmosphere change, the storms becoming more intense, the lightning looking like strobe lights, the sickness coming on. Like, I'm seeing people in these die suddenly groups, and they're in Florida and they're feeling the barometer dropping and they're feeling their body trying to release. And they feel the respiratory issues, and I know exactly what they're feeling. They think that there's poison in the air, or the bees are reacting. No, it's the barometer dropping to such a degree that it's causing instability in their immune system, and they're developing phlegm, and they're racked in pain. I know exactly what they're feeling. It's not poison in the air. I mean, maybe you could think all the different particles that are dropping to intensify storms. Yes, that probably is part of it, but it's the instability that's causing them the unease, dis-ease. So, I don't know, guys. This is pretty crazy shit that we're experiencing. So, we got lucky that we were able to, not even lucky, but my husband and I are very strategic. He's fucking smart, very strong. He's realizing now, he's kind of scared right now, like my husband, not say scared, but he's like, okay, should we like get a bunch of food? And I have some freeze-dried fruit, only good for 7 days for one person. Things that you like, those survivalist type of freeze-dried stuff. I'm like, I'm not too worried about it out here again. But he's finally seen what I've been seeing the last 3 fucking years. Because of how intense these storms are going to be. What happened to California. And now it's going to happen to Florida again. So he's getting it. It's taking him slower to get it. I see the writing on the wall when the subway stations in New York were filling up with water because that hurricane was marched his way up the fucking coast of the Atlantic, the eastern seaboard. And then I'm afraid it's going to go cross over through PA, Pennsylvania, and then to Ohio, or New York, Pennsylvania, then to Ohio. That's not out of the question. Especially when they're watching this hurricane, being like, okay, right smack into the crook of Florida, hitting then southern Georgia, and then all the Carolinas, and you see all up the freaking eastern seaboard, where all that rain's going to be ending up. I knew a long time ago shit was going to be fucking unreal. I knew when the whole V things and all this stuff was going on with the pandemic, I knew how bad shit was going to get. I knew how bad shit was going to get because I already felt it. I wasn't cured. I wasn't living in fantasy land. I wasn't under the influence. Denying shit. Playing fantasy shit. No. I understand the reality of what's going on. And it's going to take some people a lot longer to face that reality. And some won't survive facing that reality because they'll be right there at the 11th hour that they finally wake up and here comes a huge tidal wave or a storm surge and they're going up to the top of their house so they can be saved by a helicopter, maybe. That's when people wake up when they're faced with death and they don't survive it. And that's pretty sad. That's a child. That's a child. And we have so many adult children out there. And it's obvious. So, yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to say that because, yeah, I feel bad for those that haven't woken up to what's going on in Florida and on the coast. I feel bad they haven't figured it out. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what they're going to have to face. And then it's all the sickness. Because as the weather becomes so unstable and so aggressive, so are the sicknesses. And people's dying suddenly. So, that's all I'm going to say right now. I feel good. I have not too much to say. I was listening to all my Jewish music yesterday, and it was nice listening to that stuff because it was a reminder, it was a memory unlock, and those are the memories that are good memories. Once you release all those demons, then you remember the good times. You remember the things that made you feel accepted, made you feel good for that time. And so that's the whole point of the J-World, is release all the trauma and the demons and the things that make you feel a certain way and loop in as far as the depression or melancholy or anger. And then remember the good times and you enjoy the good times in your head. And I put a lot of my memories on Facebook. And then you appreciate the culture and the arts and all the things that are diverse that you grew up with, that you can share with the world and open up someone's eyes about some culture that you were exposed to that was poignant at the time. But you got to be in a relatively safe space to do that. And if you're just surviving, living in fucking South Florida, yeah, you're not going to get where I'm coming from. You're not going to get where I'm coming from. All right, bye.